Here are 10 tricks that are easier in other stances. Up first, we have the Fakie 360 flip. So everyone knows that 360 flips are cool. But if you're someone who's just now learning them, you may be having trouble getting the full rotation or the full flip down. Well, this is where the Fakie 360 flip can come into play. Because you're riding Fakie, the momentum of the board will be going with you, which means it's much easier to get a faster rotation and flick. Which pretty much means that you don't need to put your foot into the pocket like you would for a regular 360 flip, but you can leave it pretty much in the center of the nose because it's so much easier to rotate. So if you're someone who's trying to learn 360 flips, but you're having trouble getting the full rotation or flip, I would definitely suggest trying it Fakie. Up next, we have the Fakie Bigspin. So much like the Fakie 360 flip, because of the same reason when you're rolling Fakie and you have the momentum going with you, it makes big spins a lot easier. I personally kind of suck at regular big spins and I just don't seem to get them. But a Fakie big spin is probably one of the easiest tricks. You can see why doing a trick where the board and your body rotates would be easier Fakie by doing the pivot test. Basically, you can easily roll and do a Fakie pivot with no problems. But if you're riding regular and do a backside pivot while balancing on your back wheels, you'll see that it's much harder to keep your momentum going. Well, the same concept applies to the big spin, where when you're riding Fakie, when you jump and shove the board, it's already going in the right direction for you to land on it, rather than a regular big spin, which for some can be hard to keep underneath you. So once again, if you're having trouble with big spins and you want something just a little easier, I would suggest Fakie big spins. For trick number 3, we have the big spin heel flip. Now, regular big spin heel flips are extremely hard for me, and it's something I've never really even gotten close to. But Fakie big spin heel flips are one of my go-to tricks. Something about riding Fakie and doing this trick makes it a lot easier to dig your foot into the board to give it a proper scoop. And also, I think it's much easier to flick out with your heel when you're going Fakie and frontside than it is when you're just going regular. Also, it seems that a lot of people find Nollie big spin heel flips easier than regular as well. But either way, whether it's Fakie or Nollie, standing on the nose of your board and having the momentum go with you seems to make this trick much easier. So if a big spin heel flip is something that you want to learn, but it seems a bit out of reach, I would suggest going out and trying a few Fakie and a few Nollie and see which one works best for you. Up next, we have the Nollie 360 shove it. So 360 shove its are a cool enough trick and they're not too hard, but the one problem that a lot of people have with it is the board always flips over. Well, for me, when I do them Nollie, it seems like this problem goes away entirely. And to be fair, I know that I'm not quite popping them, but this just shows why Nollie is easier. Using the same logic as the pivot test before, you can do the same thing except pivoting on your nose and then pivoting regular, and you can see just how much easier it is to spin the board and keep your momentum. And as I've taught in an older video, you can always practice just doing regular Nollie shove-its until you get the feeling down, and once you feel comfortable, you can go for the full 360. And for trick number 5, we have the backside heel flip. So when you do a backside heel flip Fakie, it becomes a half cab heel flip. And compared to a regular backside heel flip, I think it's much easier. When you're doing regular backside heel flips, it can be hard to keep the board underneath you or get the full rotation or flip. But much like the other tricks, when you're rolling Fakie and you try this one, the way that the board pops up and stays under your body because it's traveling in the same direction that you are, makes this one way easier when you're going Fakie. To get the feeling of this, you can do a regular backside 180 and then a half cab, and you should be able to notice that it's easier to put your weight into the rotation when you're going Fakie. And for this reason, when I'm doing a Fakie backside heel flip, I can focus more on the flip and me jumping, rather than having to get the rotation down. So if you're looking to get into backside heel flips, but you just can't seem to get the board to stay underneath you, then I definitely suggest trying it Fakie. For trick number 6, we have the switch heel flip. For a lot of people, when they first start learning flip tricks, they're either a kickflip or a heel flip person. But either way, once you start to get better, most people turn into a switch heel flip person. And that's because, for some reason, for a lot of people, switch heel flips just feel more natural than regular. While regular heel flips aren't too tough, for some people, they just always feel a bit awkward. So if you like heel flips and you're into skating switch, then definitely try out some switch heel flips. Coming up, we have switch frontside shove-its. Much like heel flips, the frontside shove-it is a relatively basic trick, which isn't too tough to do regular, but some people find it much more comfortable and easier to do while riding switch. The back foot motion, which is used in a frontside shove it to pop and push the board around, can just feel a lot easier when you're popping off of your front foot instead of your back foot. And for the same reason, it seems like the problem of your board flipping over while shoveting can be a little better controlled when popping at switch. Next up, we have the switch frontside big spin. So building off of the switch frontside shove it, if you add an extra rotation of your board and your body, you get the switch frontside big spin. One of the main reasons why this can be easier than a regular frontside big spin is that once you pop it and you rotate, you're landing back to regular instead of having to land switch. A regular frontside big spin requires a lot of scoop from your back foot, and it can be really hard to get the full rotation down. With a switch frontside big spin, it's a lot easier to think of the trick as a switch frontside shove it with a pivot at the end. So if you can do the switch frontside shove it's, and if you can also do switch frontside 180s, then it's just a matter of putting them together into the switch frontside big spin. For trick number 9, we have the switch Varial Heelflip. So if switch heel flips and switch frontside shove it's are easier, then logically, a switch Varial Heelflip will be too. A regular Varial Heelflip is a pretty common trick, but I've honestly landed maybe one clean one in my entire life. Switch Varial Heelflips, on the other hand, I can do fairly easily. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, other than the fact that when I pop this trick switch, it just feels like I have much better leverage for both the scoop and the flick. Overall, it's just a really good feeling trick, and I think it's relatively impressive too. So if you're like me and you have trouble with your Varial Heelflips, I would definitely say you should go out and try them switch and see if it works for you. And finally, at number 10, we have the Nollie backside heel flip. So I know that I already talked about backside heel flips earlier, and I really don't want to make this confusing, but really quickly let me just point out that Nollie spin directions are reversed, so a Nollie backside heel flip is kind of the opposite of a Fakie frontside heel flip. So basically a Nollie backside heel flip or a Fakie frontside heel flip is easier to do than a regular frontside heel flip. Once again, this comes down to you having the momentum going with you when you're doing a Nollie or Fakie rotation. And just like the Fakie or Nollie big spin heel flip, for this one, it's just easier to dig your foot into the pocket in order to get an easier rotation and flick. When you flick your foot to do the heel flip on this one, the board tends to stay under your body, and it won't tend to fall behind you like it will for a regular frontside heel flip. So definitely give these a shot and see if it's easier for you. So these were just 10 tricks that me and Doug found easier in other stances rather than regular. You probably noticed a similar trend in a lot of these tricks, where if there's a rotation of your body or the board, then they tend to be easier while going Fakie or Nollie. And this tends to be true with a lot of other tricks too. So if you're having trouble learning a trick, I would definitely suggest trying it in a few other stances just to see if maybe it comes a little easier to you. Anyway, I'd like to thank Doug Des Autels for contributing his awesome skateboarding and knowledge to this video. Definitely go check out his new channel called A Doug's Life. There'll be a card up top and a link down below in the description. I'd also like to thank my wonderful Patreon subscribers. They are the wind beneath my wings and they keep it real. And finally, I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.